The conference room fell so silent that even the hum of the air conditioner seemed loud. More than 60 employees stared as the CEO slammed his hand onto the polished oak table, his voice echoing across the room with cold authority. Every eye turned toward one man standing quietly near the end of the table, his worn leather bag resting beside his chair. The CEO's words sliced through the silence like a knife. He gave a single command that everyone expected to end one employee's career forever. "Do as I said or quit." No one imagined that instead of arguing, begging, or apologizing, the single father would calmly zip up his bag, thank everyone for the opportunity, and walk toward the exit. The confidence in his steps left the entire office frozen. Even the CEO, who believed people would do anything to keep their jobs, suddenly felt something he hadn't experienced in years: fear that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness deserves a second chance, and that doing the right thing still matters in today's world, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Soulful Tales 2. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach more people around the world. The man walking toward the elevator was named Rowan Mercer, a 36-year-old widower whose entire world revolved around his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel. Every morning before sunrise, Rowan braided Hazel's chestnut hair the best he could after watching dozens of online tutorials. The braids were never perfect, but Hazel proudly wore them because they were made by the only parent she had left. Ever since his wife passed away after a sudden illness 4 years earlier, Rowan had promised himself that no promotion, no paycheck, and no title would ever become more important than keeping that promise. Life had not been kind. Medical bills had consumed nearly everything the family had saved. Rowan sold his motorcycle, then his watch, and finally the small house filled with memories. They moved into a modest apartment where every dollar mattered. Still, every evening ended with laughter over homemade dinners, bedtime stories, and quiet conversations about dreams that refused to die. Hazel often reminded her father that being together made them richer than many people who owned mansions. To support his daughter, Rowan accepted a position at Halcyon Dynamics, one of the city's fastest-growing technology companies. The pay was decent, but the environment was demanding. Employees admired the company from the outside because of its impressive headquarters, luxurious offices, and ambitious projects. Inside, however, everyone feared one man. The CEO, Victor Ashcroft, had built the company from almost nothing. Newspapers celebrated him as a visionary genius. Investors admired his relentless drive, and business magazines called him fearless. Yet inside the office, people whispered different words whenever he walked. Past, unforgiving, demanding, impossible to satisfy. He believed that personal lives should never interfere with professional success. To him, sacrifice was the price of greatness. Rowan rarely complained. He arrived early every morning after dropping Hazel at school and often stayed late to solve problems others couldn't. His calm personality earned respect throughout every department. Whenever a new employee struggled, Rowan quietly stayed behind to help without expecting recognition. He remembered how difficult it felt to start over after losing everything, and he refused to let anyone feel alone. Despite his dedication, Rowan never hid one condition before accepting the job. Every Wednesday afternoon, he needed to leave exactly at 4 o'clock because Hazel attended therapy sessions that helped her recover from the emotional trauma of losing her mother. Those weekly appointments had become sacred. During them, Hazel slowly learned to smile again, laugh without guilt, and believe that happiness was not a betrayal of the parent she had lost. For almost 2 years, Rowan never missed a deadline. Every project he managed finished ahead of schedule. His supervisors praised his efficiency because they knew he compensated for every hour spent with his daughter by working harder during the rest of the week. Everything changed on one bright Tuesday morning. Halcyon Dynamics landed the largest contract in company history. Excitement spread through every department. Celebration quickly turned into pressure as impossible deadlines appeared overnight. Victor Ashcroft demanded absolute commitment from every employee. Meetings stretched late into the evening. Weekend schedules disappeared. Family plans were canceled without discussion. At first, Rowan adapted like everyone else. He worked through lunch, skipped coffee breaks, and volunteered for additional responsibilities. His co-workers noticed the exhaustion beneath his eyes, but he never complained. Every evening, he still returned home carrying groceries instead of excuses. Hazel deserved a father who arrived with a smile, no matter how difficult the day had been. Then Wednesday arrived. At exactly 3:30 in the afternoon, Rowan completed the final report assigned to him and prepared to leave for Hazel's therapy appointment. Before he reached the elevator, his department manager stopped him with a pale expression and asked him to report immediately to the executive conference room. The room was already filled. Department heads, project leaders, and senior executives surrounded the massive table. At the front stood Victor Ashcroft, reviewing production schedules projected across a giant screen. Without greeting anyone, the CEO announced that every employee involved in the new contract would remain at work until at least 9 o'clock every evening for the next 6 weeks. No exceptions. Several people quietly lowered their heads. Others exchanged worried glances. Nobody spoke. Victor then asked if anyone had a problem with the new policy. Silence covered the room. Finally, Rowan slowly raised his hand. He respectfully reminded the CEO that he had informed the company years earlier about his daughter's Wednesday therapy sessions. He explained that he was willing to work earlier, stay later on every other day, and even work weekends if necessary. But those 2 hours every Wednesday belonged to his daughter. The room grew painfully still. Victor stared at Rowan for several long seconds before walking closer. He spoke calmly, but every word carried the weight of authority. He said companies succeed because employees place the mission above personal inconvenience. He claimed that if one person received special treatment, everyone would demand exceptions. Then came the sentence that echoed through the entire room. Do as I said or quit. Many employees expected Rowan to apologize. Some expected him to surrender. Others looked away because they couldn't bear watching another hardworking colleague lose everything. Instead, Rowan quietly nodded. He thanked the CEO for the opportunities the company had given him over the past 2 years. He gathered the notebook containing his project plans, closed his laptop, placed it carefully inside his worn leather bag, and removed his employee identification badge. He set the badge gently on the conference table. No anger, no raised voice, no dramatic speech, only quiet dignity. He wished everyone success on the new project and walked toward the door. The sound of the closing door seemed louder than any argument. No one moved. Victor remained standing, expecting Rowan to stop, turn around, or ask for another chance. He never did. The elevator doors closed. Rowan was gone. At that exact moment, something invisible shifted inside Halcyon Dynamics. The office had just witnessed a man choose his daughter over his career, and somehow, instead of looking weak, he had become the strongest person in the building. The news spread through Halcyon Dynamics before Rowan even reached the parking lot. Employees whispered in hallways, stared at the empty workstation he had left behind, and struggled to understand how someone could calmly walk away from the only steady income supporting a young child. Many admired his courage. Others worried that they would never have been strong enough to make the same decision. For years, they had convinced themselves that sacrificing their families was simply the price of success. Yet Rowan's quiet departure forced every one of them to question what success truly meant. Rowan drove through the bright afternoon sunlight with mixed emotions. Fear sat heavily in his chest because bills would not disappear simply because he had chosen his daughter. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Hazel's school expenses were approaching. The refrigerator was nearly empty. Yet beneath the fear was an unexpected peace. He had kept the promise he made beside his wife's hospital bed years ago. No job would ever come before Hazel. When Rowan arrived at the therapy center, Hazel rushed across the waiting room with the biggest smile on her face. She hugged him tightly and proudly showed him a small painting she had made during school. It showed a father and daughter standing beneath a large tree with the words, "Home is wherever Dad is." Rowan felt tears forming, but he blinked them away before Hazel noticed. In that simple drawing, every sacrifice suddenly felt worthwhile. That evening, they cooked a simple dinner together. They laughed over burnt pancakes that were supposed to be sandwiches and ended the night reading an old adventure book they had borrowed from the local library. Hazel sensed that something had changed. and before going to sleep, she gently asked whether everything was all right. Rowan smiled warmly and told her that sometimes doing the right thing was difficult, but it always allowed a person to sleep peacefully. Hazel nodded as though she understood far more than her young age should have allowed. The next morning, life moved on. Rowan updated his resume and quietly began searching for work. He avoided telling anyone why he had left. Halcyon Dynamics because he did not want sympathy. He simply wanted another opportunity to provide for his daughter. Meanwhile, inside Halcyon Dynamics, the atmosphere had completely changed. Without Rowan's leadership, deadlines immediately began slipping. Critical files could not be located because Rowan had organized countless systems that no one else fully understood. Small problems quickly became major setbacks. Team members who once relied on Rowan's calm guidance started arguing under pressure. Productivity dropped, mistakes increased, and frustration spread throughout the office. Victor Ashcroft initially dismissed the problems. He believed everyone was replaceable. That had always been his philosophy. Yet by the end of the week, several respected employees submitted resignation letters. During their exit interviews, each of them mentioned the same reason. They no longer believed the company valued people. Those words lingered in Victor's mind long after the meetings ended. For the first time in years, the CEO walked through the office without speaking. He noticed exhausted faces instead of determined ones. He overheard conversations about missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and children who had stopped asking whether their parents would come home for dinner. The company was still making money, but something far more valuable had quietly disappeared. One afternoon, Victor paused outside the small daycare room the company had built years earlier for publicity, but rarely used. It was empty. The silence reminded him of someone he had not visited in months, his own elderly mother. She lived alone only 30 minutes away. That evening, Victor surprised her with an unexpected visit. As they shared tea by the window, she looked at him with gentle disappointment rather than anger. She asked why he never came anymore. Victor spoke about responsibilities, investors, meetings, and deadlines. His mother listened patiently before saying something that pierced his heart. She told him that companies could always find another CEO someday, but families never found another son. The words echoed through his mind all night. The following morning, Victor requested Rowan's employment file. Instead of performance reports, he found page after page of praise from coworkers. Rowan had donated vacation days to struggling colleagues, quietly paid for an employee's emergency medication, and volunteered at community events without ever mentioning it. Most surprising of all, Rowan had repeatedly refused promotions that would have required sacrificing the Wednesday afternoons he reserved for Hazel. Victor leaned back in his chair, staring out the office window. For years, he had believed leadership meant demanding everything from others. Now he wondered if true leadership meant protecting the people who made success possible. He made a decision. Instead of sending a lawyer or human resources representative, Victor drove alone to Rowan's apartment on a sunny Saturday afternoon. He climbed the worn staircase carrying no contract, no security staff, and no prepared speech. Outside the apartment, he heard laughter. Through the slightly open window, he saw Rowan teaching Hazel how to plant flowers in old recycled cans on the balcony. Their clothes were dusty. Their apartment was small. Yet the happiness on their faces was something Victor had not experienced in years despite his wealth. He quietly knocked. Rowan opened the door with calm surprise. Victor looked around the modest apartment and understood something that every expensive office in his skyscraper had failed to teach him. Real success could not be measured by quarterly profits. It was measured by moments like these.